everyone to the second season of Half Hour Jack Hour. It's a little late start for us this year, but I've been applying to college, and so have my guests, Abby Wright, Tori Shee, and Neely Rose. So we're just going to jump right into the whole college process, and we're going to start with freshman and sophomore years. So what do you guys think is important about your first 2 years of high school?
Definitely focusing on your course selections and your grades, because although those aren't necessarily the most important years for grades, as a lot of people might say, they aren't able to be changed, obviously, after you take those classes. So you should definitely think about classes that would benefit you in the long run to take, and definitely focus on your academic work.
And you want to make sure that you're challenging yourself the right amount. So you don't want to take too many like A-level classes or too many easier classes. You sort of want to have like the perfect amount of honors or AP classes in there, because you need to show college's rigor.
In my experience, I would say freshman year is kind of your trial run with high school. Like, you can not challenge yourself as much. Maybe take a few, maybe like a couple honors courses, and then some more A-levels than maybe your sophomore, junior, and senior year. And then as you go to sophomore, junior, and senior year, maybe you start challenging yourself with more honors classes and AP courses. Because in the colleges that I visited, they're really looking for a rigor in your schedules. And in junior year, like the first, reality of college is hit by many students when they have to take the PSAT. Did you all take the PSAT?
Yeah.
Yes.
And did you find it helpful for taking the actual SAT?
I didn't necessarily think that it was helpful in necessarily the questions or the problems that you do on the PSAT. I just think it kind of prepared you for the test environment that you would be in, and having taken it definitely prepared me for just what that morning would be like, and what kind of experience you would have.
Yeah, and definitely it is a practice, so I'm pretty sure it's the exact same as the actual SAT. The only difference is it doesn't actually count for colleges.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to see what it's like, do your first run, and just know what you're going to expect when you take the actual SAT.
Yeah.
I think what students have to remember is they haven't learned all the materials either. Because there's some math classes where you're taking and you still haven't covered certain things that are going to show up on the test.
The SAT is a little bit more challenging. The questions are a little bit more challenging, a little bit more complicated than the PSAT, but the PSAT is sort of a good indicator of what you can do without practicing, without studying. And also, one of the things you can do with the PSAT is if you score high enough, you can become a National Merit Scholar or a National Merit finalist. So that's kind of hard to do. You probably need to do some prep for that. But if you become a National Merit Scholar, that looks really, really good on college applications, and you can get scholarships.
So let's talk more about junior year. So at the beginning of your junior year, you take the PSAT. And then during your junior year is when you're going to take the actual SAT, and you're also going to be researching colleges. When you guys were looking at colleges, did you guys start your junior year, would you say?
I started my freshman year.
Freshman year.
But not seriously. I would definitely say that I focused a lot more on it my junior year. Overall, I've been to 27 schools, and I've actually gone to information sessions or toured at 17 of those schools, and most of those were during my junior year.
Yeah, personally, I started about sophomore year because my brother, he was a grade above me, so he was going through the whole junior year process just a year before me. So I got to see some schools then, and like Neely said, it wasn't too serious. But then when my junior year started, then I started actually focusing on what I wanted, big school, small school, those kind of specifics that you don't really think about in the earlier years.
Yeah, I started my junior year completely, and I definitely think that I should have started earlier, at least browsing a little bit. But I think I probably had enough time, and I knew what I wanted to do, so I felt pretty good about it.
One of the things I would suggest is there are a lot of breaks during in every school year that you have a lot of vacations and breaks, and just to take one of those to go and tour some schools. I went to Pennsylvania, DC, and Maryland for February break, and I actually brought one of my friends, and I brought my younger sister who's a sophomore, and we toured 10 schools during that break. And it was fun because I had a friend to go with me, and I was also getting a lot out of it because I was touring a lot of schools in a condensed amount of time.
Yeah, I went to DC during April vacation, and I would highly recommend to all juniors that you start looking your junior year, or at least go to some schools. Even if you can't, you can go online and just have maybe a list of where you want to potentially look at, or even give the schools a call and ask your questions, because it's really helpful, especially where we are now. it gets a little stressful. So talking about the SAT, most students take the SAT their junior year. They can also take the ACT. But what have been your experiences with the SAT, and how did you prepare for it? I guess, are you like happy with your score? Do you wish you could like do more, or do you feel like it is what it is? It's just a standardized test.
I took the SAT only twice, and my biggest regret, I think, is that I didn't take it more times. I got a pretty good score on my first test, and I actually did worse on my second one, which was surprising and not very fun. I used Khan Academy to study for the most part, but I do wish I had studied more. I think that if I had prepared a little bit more for the test, then I would have gotten a better score. But overall, I think it is only part of your application process, and if you are not a good test taker or you get a bad score, it's not the end of the world, and you have other ways that you can make up for it. So
I agree with that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. What I did for preparation is I took my PSAT scores, and then through that you can put it all into Khan Academy and practice specifically what you are not great at, and so that definitely helped. I took it, the actual SAT, 3 or 4 times, and my scores went up, and it's just, I think the more you take it, the more familiar you get with the test.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just good to practice it a lot.
Practice, yeah.
Yeah, I took it 3 times. I had a tutor, I had a group tutor the first time I took it. The second time I took it, I didn't study for it, and my score went up 120 points. And then the third time I took it, I had a tutor through, I think, Harvard Student Association. They have like a tutoring service. So I did that, and then I also used Khan Academy.
I've taken it 4 times, maybe taking it a 5th, not quite sure. I just took it on November 4th, so I'm hoping that the scores come back. I'm hoping my score goes up a little. But I did tutoring with a group called Summit Education, which I found helpful. But I feel like, in my opinion, it really depends on the test you're given, because, I mean, I don't know, I'm just not a great test taker with time either. So it really is like, when you're preparing for it, I would highly recommend that you time yourself, because it's good to like know how to do questions, but it's also, you're in that environment where you're like under pressure to get it done. So I would remember doing that while practicing. But you brought up a good point about how you don't think it's the be-all and end-all of an application.
Right.
Which I would agree with, especially at going to schools that said they're SAT optional. Do you think the SAT is becoming less significant in who you've talked to, I guess, throughout this?
I think it really depends on the school, and it depends on, especially it depends on either your school, your high school's history of applying to the school, because for me, I'm applying to a lot of schools that not many people from Nauset have ever applied to or gotten into. So I feel like it's a little bit more important for me, just because it doesn't necessarily gauge your intelligence, but it gauges like part of what you've learned, and it's a way to compare you to other students from other schools. So if a college isn't familiar with your school, it's a way to compare you to a kid from another school.
That's a good point.
If you have if you're applying to somewhere like Northeastern, it's probably less significant. Because they've seen so many kids from Nauset, and they've seen they've seen GPAs and they've seen grades from Nauset before. Yeah. But I think in my situation, it was more important.
So maybe it's like a different thing between like regional and more national.
Yeah.
And I think that the SAT and your GPA are really just baselines for schools. So they'll see those and they'll get a sense of where you're at, but then they look more into like course rigor, extracurriculars, like
Boston University.
Yeah, like those kind of things. And it's not just your test scores that are important to schools nowadays. It's everything. It's the whole package.
The whole package.
Right, you
And
have to be
it-
a very well-rounded student.
what you have to offer
Yeah.
is really what they're looking for. And you're always more than a number. So getting close to the summer, going into senior year, before I would recommend that you ask your teachers for their recommendations for your application. Did you guys do that before this summer?
I did mine. I asked both of my teachers either before my junior year was over, during the school year, or during the summer of my junior year going into senior year. And it's been a pretty seamless process. So I think you run into some errors when you start asking teachers in your senior year, and maybe some teachers will say no because they don't have enough time. So you always want to give them just plenty of time to write it. Otherwise, you might be stuck.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the teacher you ask. Definitely do end of junior year because for my teachers at least, they wanted to like meet with me and like get to know specifically what I wanted them to highlight in my recommendation letter. So if you give them a lot of time, they can have time to think about it and make it a more personalized recommendation rather than just a generic, this person is great.
And I would definitely say if you're going to ask AP teachers, then you should probably wait until after the AP test because they'll be like they're really consumed with like preparing you for the test before, and also then they can see your test score if they're going to write it during the summer.
And teachers don't have to grade papers during the summer, so they have time to write. I asked before summer, and I also had to sit down with one of my teachers. And yeah, you definitely don't want to wait till the last minute because if they're writing a recommendation the night before, they're not going to pick out your best qualities. They might just say, you know, they got decent grades, they're a great student, but they're not going to be able to give like a full look at your character. So during the summer is probably the beginning of, you know, applying to college, like for real. So during the summer, I started filling out the common application, also writing my essay. What did you guys do during the summer? And did you guys try to get a head start on the whole process?
I knew that going into my senior year, not every English class is like this, but in my English class, I was going to be given specific time that would be writing my college essay. So that was something that, for me at least, I didn't really worry about over the summer because I knew that I was going to have time to do it. So that gave me a lot of time to work on my common application, and I had it pretty much completely done, besides things that I didn't know going into my senior year. So that was definitely a big weight off of my shoulders, and I would suggest that anyone who has the ability or the time to do that should definitely do that during the summer.
Yeah, and for me, I came out of AP English, so after our AP exam, we didn't really have a lot of stuff to be doing, so we started thinking about college essays, thinking about ideas to write, and then I personally had to do like a rough draft for that class, so I had like a idea written, but then over the summer I edited it, and I set up a College Board account and just started looking through the Common App process and all those kind of things.
I filled out most of my Common App over the summer, but I spent most of my summer doing SAT prep because I took the SAT at the end of August, and that was really helpful for me because I didn't have to worry about taking tests and studying for that for those while I was trying to do all my homework for my senior classes in the first couple months of school. And then I basically procrastinated on my essay, which I don't recommend, until like the last couple weeks of October, and then I had to submit it for my November 1st deadline.
Yeah, I tried to study for the SAT too. I had like the same philosophy that like, oh, I'll have like a ton of time to study. Didn't come back with the best results, unfortunately. But this year they did offer an August SAT, which I would recommend because you don't have to do homework really during the summer unless it's your summer homework. But Abby brought up another point about how you were going to be able to write your essay at the beginning of your senior year.
Right.
So do you think, with your experience, that you've had time during school to like get help to apply to college? Do you think there's been like courses that have understood that you have to write essays, that you have deadlines?
I'm in SWS, and I definitely think that the English department in SWS was very considerate towards the essay writing process, and they knew that we had to write essays, which is why they gave us the time to do that. So in my experience, they've been very helpful. I wouldn't say that you get as much time to just do your applications or your Common App and stuff like that, just because that's something that a lot of teachers expect you to do outside of school, which I think is reasonable.
Yeah, and in my English class, we didn't have like designated time to work on the essay in class, but she did give the offer to edit ours, and we could turn them in, and she would look through them. She also had us do a resume, and she would help us with that. But there was no dedicated class time to working on college things.
Yeah, I'm in the same English class as Tori, and my teacher edited my essay like probably 8 times, so that was really helpful, but that was all outside of class. And I really didn't have any time to work on my applications during school. And I also found that like my classes, we'd talk with our teachers about how we were all stressed out about the college process, and they would seem like they completely understood and they would like rant with us. But then they would assign us a ton of homework right before the November 1st deadline, and they just didn't really care.
Yeah,
So.
it's like the week leading up.
Yeah.
Maybe no homework week. I'm in college honors composition, and during that course. If you're like looking for next year for juniors, you do get to write your college essay, and there's like multiple revisions. So I found that a helpful class. So moving on kind of into the fall is definitely like the finishing up season for us seniors. Was the was like the week before November 1st very stressful for all of us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
stressful.
Yes.
Very stressful.
It's not a myth. It's definitely real. So I guess what were your frustrations?
I felt like my frustrations were in that I didn't completely understand, or at least I felt like I didn't understand all of the supporting documents that have to go into your college applications and what you are responsible for versus what your guidance counselor is responsible for. And that's something that I figured out and kind of figured out on my own, but it's definitely good to know and have everything in place, like your resume, your essay, your payment, and stuff like that, and have that all set away so that you know that when you have to turn that stuff in after you submit your application, that you're not going to be scrambling to find documents or scrambling to email your guidance counselor to have things sent off and stuff like that. So that was definitely really stressful, and I would say have that stuff prepared long before November 1st.
Yeah, and with like getting documents ready, for me, since I did an early decision school, they had to have my FAFSA and my CSS profile was due for the November 1st deadline.
Oh, wow, really?
And so for those, there's a lot of like tax information, your parents' information, like all that stuff. Luckily, like I said, my brother had just done it last year, so my parents were really organized with it. But when they did it for him, it definitely was a process to find all the information to fill out those forms.
To kind of like expand on what you said, Tori, like, and Abby, there are a lot of things that I think students forget about. So like we are under this assumption that we just have to like submit the Common App, we have to write a few essays, and the school will do everything else.
Right.
That's not
Absolutely
the case.
not true
That
at
is not
all.
the case. I would say I did not really know too much about the financial aid as much as I would like to have known maybe like 2 weeks ago. Because right now I'm filling out the FAFSA and I'm filling out the CSS profile on the Common App because not the Common App, the college app, the College Board. And that does take a while, so I would definitely get a head start. Most schools for early action, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that's due November 15th, which I did a few. But yeah, so I would definitely make an appointment with your guidance counselor, know what you have to have done by what date, and know when you're applying to college. So I guess we're gonna talk about deadlines now, kind of wrapping up. I think we should distinguish what's the difference between early action, early decision, and regular decision or regular admission. So did any of us do early action or early decision? Because I know I did early action.
I applied to 4 schools early action and did not apply to any early decision.
So early action is you can apply to a school early, usually November 1st, November 15th, and once you hit submit, you usually get an answer from the college by...
It's usually November 15th or November 1st.
For
I mean,
a decision.
Sorry, December.
December.
Yeah.
I know
1st or December
on like
15th.
Boston College, it's like December 25th, so
Yeah.
Christmas.
Nice.
Yeah, right.
Nice Christmas present.
Yeah. So that's early action. It's non-binding. So say you get into the school, it doesn't mean you have to go. You just know early whether you got into the college or not, which helps you out when you're in January and applying to other colleges. So like, do I really want to do this again, or do I want to go to the school that I got into? Then there's early decision, which Tori did, and that's binding, which means if you get into the school, you have to go.
Yep.
And do you want to talk about where you did early decision to?
So I did early decision to Boston University, and I did that because I know, for me personally, it's a little bit of a reach school, so applying early decision is more of an advantage, I guess.
It shows interest.
And you're being looked at in a pool of like 6,000 people rather than like 50,000 people, so it's definitely an advantage. But I wouldn't recommend doing early decision unless you know that's where you want to go, because it is binding, and the only way out of it is financially if you can't afford it. So definitely only do early decision if you know it's where you want to go and you're definitely committed.
And you did ED too?
I'm applying early decision next week to Davidson College, the school that's on my hat. And I'm applying early decision because it's obviously my top choice, and also because like the odds are a little bit more in my favor if I apply early decision. And one of the things that I did, the school that I want to go to is in North Carolina, so it's far away. And I knew about it because my mom actually went there. But I did an overnight, which really helped me realize that that was the school that I wanted to go to. And I got to go to 4 classes, and they were actually classes that I would take because I want to be a political science major. So it was really helpful for me. I got to see like how students actually live at Davidson, and then I figured out that that's where I wanted to go.
And I'll just say again, early action is, if you apply early action, it's not showing any interest really. They look at you as if you're applying in January. It's sometimes more selective, and then early decision, you show interest, and they kind of take that into account. And then let's talk about regular decision. That's usually January 1st or January 15th, and that's when the majority of students apply to college. And decisions are usually given by April, and then you have to commit by May, if I'm correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know I have a bunch of colleges I'm applying to in January. So I guess we'll finish the show with where are we going to go to college next year, or where we want to go to college. 'Cause I know we don't know 100% yet, but I guess we can start with Neely. So what are your plans? I know you brought up Davidson.
Yeah, I really want to go to Davidson, and if that doesn't work, then I have a couple safety schools and a couple schools that I'm considering in Ohio, like Kenyon and Denison, and in Pennsylvania, like Dickinson and Gettysburg.
Tori?
Yeah, so I did ED to BU, so if I get in there, I'll go there. But if not, I also did Emerson, Quinnipiac, and Suffolk.
Great.
So I applied early action to Champlain College and Pace University. That's 2 out of the 4 that I applied to, and I would really like to go to either one of those schools, just depending on where I get into. And I don't know, we'll see what happens.
And I am hoping to go to Washington, D.C. My top 2 picks are either Georgetown or George Washington University. I want to major in political science like Neely, and who knows, I don't really know what I want to do with political science yet. I might want to work for a campaign or maybe sit in a position like I'm doing right now. So that's going to wrap up the first episode of Half Hour Jack Hour. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you real soon.